Mrs. Amina Zakari, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Well, in your second meeting with resident electoral commissioners, that's the second one after the 2015 general elections, you mentioned that the commissioners should be cautious in their dealings, perhaps ahead of the upcoming elections in Kogi and Bayelsa State, owing to the cases you have at the election tribunals.
We called for caution in terms of the perception of the public as to their partiality or partisanship in terms of delivery of allowing these inspections or provision of materials. We called for caution in terms of their preparations for the elections, so that once we prepare well and we conduct the elections as an impartial umpire, we are likely to have good elections and there won't be any need for tribunal cases. So there is definitely need for caution in our dealings and the perception we put out there to the public as to our impartiality and non-partisanship.
But do you sense any disagreement, from Nigerians or the parties when it comes to INEC's dealings with the election tribunals and the way you've handled the cases so far?
Well, in some cases, our staff are accused of not providing the documentation or not being cooperative when it comes to the inspection. But we also need to look at our laws. INEC is always a respondent to these cases. And when you are taken to court as a respondent, the tendency is for you to try and defend the case as if you are the guilty party. You try to prove your innocence. So sometimes it's really a human nature issue where people think, I'm taken to court, I have to defend my position. So sometimes that's what causes the problems. But generally, there are many tribunals out there. Generally, we don't have crises. It's just in a few areas for certain reasons.
You see, the issue of security of election materials comes up again and again. You rightly mentioned that to the Rex when you met them at the meeting. What gives you the most concern about these materials and how secure it is?
Well, we have the pre-election security of election materials where we need to ensure the materials that we procure are secure and safe from tampering and safe from pilferage. We also need to ensure a continuous security of our election materials. This is in terms of our DDC machines, our card readers. We must ensure that the storage conditions are perfect for those materials because they are technological materials and they have a lifespan. And the lifespan can be shortened if you don't have the proper storage. So that's where we need to focus. After the elections, the tendency is that people will just disappear or not care, will be nonchalant about these materials. So we need to be sure that they are safely kept, and the number we kept is the number we come back to meet when we are going to have an election. It's not towards an election that we open our stores and discover missing materials that we need to procure again, because these materials are procured with Nigerian funds, they are procured with public funds, so the onus is on us to ensure that we keep them safely. Additionally, we also have to think of the security of the post-election materials. These are the documents we need for the tribunals, the result sheets, our ballot papers, our other documents, our registers. We have to ensure also the safety and security of those materials. And the recs are those at the lower level. They're the ones in the states. They command the staff in the local governments. They have to ensure that these materials are properly stored and kept safe so that when we need them, they're there.
And the issue of security brings to mind some of the occurrences that happened in the south and some other areas where INEC's offices were burned with materials in them and all of that. What sort of setback did this bring to the commission?
It's a lot of setback, because anytime this happens, we have to rebuild our offices. And then the data, the sheer loss of data, is not something you can quantify. Yes, you can quantify rebuilding, you can quantify refurnishing, but you really cannot quantify the loss of data and loss of materials. If your result sheets are in there, your register is in there, it's really an enormous loss, and so it's a cause for concern. But unfortunately, it has happened. And it happened naturally. We just got a report that it wasn't foul play, it wasn't arson. We've got a report from the security agencies based there. So,
and you're aware of the after effects of such occurrence. Do you take definite steps to curb this?
Well, in terms of if a fire starts, that means it might have been an electoral problem. So I think we will have to go back and keep on reminding the recs and the electoral officers that materials have to be stored, fire safety has to be taken into consideration, and obviously we have safes where materials should be stored. The materials that need to be secured in fireproof safes, we've provided fireproof safes in some places. I'm sure we have not been able to provide in all places. So we'll go back to the drawing board and look at the report from the security agencies and analyze it and then send back to the states what they ought to do in terms of prevention of these occurrences. But this certainly sometimes they are natural occurrences. But majority of our fire outbreaks are inflicted on us by aggrieved parties. Yeah.
Hold on with that thought. We'll be back with the acting chairman of INEC, Mrs. Amina Zakari. More on the INEC's development and election tribunals. Please stay with us.
You must now quickly understand that you have been dealing with this perennial issue of logistics. Are there international best practices that you can draw from? How does the South Africans overcome? They're also as huge as us as a country. How do they overcome logistic challenges? Do you want to have that, draw those lessons from other places to say, how do you do it? You understand that you don't, you open your calls, you open your polls when you announced you open them and close the polls when you have said you are going to close them. So those are some of the issues that we'll be looking at in Bayelsa. We have to also get back to ensure that there is citizen understanding of your process. How does this card reader work? You didn't have time for the presidential election to do all of that. Now you have between October, you have September, October. In fact, the whole of September, you can use it to do that of Kogi. October, November, you can do that of Bayelsa. Put the citizens in the know of your process. Ensure that you do public enlightenment campaigns through every medium that is possible before the election. That is the preparation.